Good morning. Today we're reading for the lesson from the LifeWay Adult 2 Bible Study for April the 26th, and the text is John chapter 15, verses 9 through 14. And we're going to start in verse 9. It's going to be a very brief commentary because I know you've read your lesson. So here we go. John chapter 15, verses 9 and 10. As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. This is from the famous I'm the vine, you are the branches sermon by Christ. This idea here of keeping commandments, what does that mean? For Christ to say that he kept the Father's commandments, what does that mean? What did the Father command him to do? And as you remember from our Easter lesson a couple of weeks ago, the Father's commandment to Christ was to humble himself, leave heaven, dwell on earth in a human body as both God and man, and to give himself a sacrifice in our place for our sins on the cross. Okay? So that's the Father's command to Christ. That's the Father's will for him. So he's saying, even as I keep my Father's commandments, I want you to keep my commandments. So that raises a question. What are the commandments of Christ? What is that? Okay, what is that? To abide in his love, to abide in him. Well, let's keep reading. John chapter 15, verses 11 and 12. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and your joy might be full. This is my commandment, that ye love one another, as I have loved you. Verse 11, that your joy might be full. My joy might remain in you, your joy might be full. Okay, it's that idea there of fullness or completeness, complete joy. The joy of the Lord is my strength, God's joy. So think for a moment what that joy or true joy looks like. Is there a difference between happiness and joy? If you ask somebody what they want in life, usually they'll tell you, oh, I just want to be happy. Is that what verse 11 is talking about, being a happy person? What is the joy of the Lord? Let's look in verse 12. This is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you. Christ loves us completely, so he wants us to love one another completely. The pastor's sermon today is from the Beatitudes, Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. It's about the merciful. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Okay, so what does that look like to love one another? Is that to show each other mercy? Is that to be forgiving, gentle, kind? And I think the answer to that would be yes. Well, how far should I go in this love, in expressing this love? Well, let's keep reading, because I think the Lord has an answer here as well. Verse 13, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. Christ was willing to lay down his life for us, okay? That's a complete sacrifice. No greater love hath the man than he lay down his life for his friends. The disciples, the apostles, were these individuals that were called to make that sacrifice. Everyone here listening to Christ, are they going to be called on to sacrifice their lives? And with the exception of the Apostle John, who was exiled to Patmos, I believe they all were. They all were asked to make that sacrifice. So realistically, for me, as a 21st century believer, confined to my home in the midst of a pandemic, what does this look like, making this sacrifice? Well, I may not be asked to give my life. So what do I give? What can I give? And I love the author of this lesson his answer. Sometimes it's not the big things. Sometimes it's the little things. It's those little kindnesses. It's the forgiveness, the mercy that we show others. It's the grace in daily living. It's that little note in a lunch kit that says, I love you. I hope you have a better day. It's that putting your arm around your kid saying, I love you, buddy, or I love you, baby. It's that kind of thing. So it can be a small thing, that way that we keep this commandment. And it can also be a large thing. We may be called on to sacrifice greatly. And what are we to do if Christ asked us to sacrifice greatly? We're to obey. And if we obey, we get the highest honor Christ has ever given any person. He says, you are my friends. You are my friends. So think about that for a minute. In the grand scheme of things, how wonderful is it to be Jesus's friend? Tell you what, with friends like Christ, you can't go wrong. So let's dwell on that during the week, about obeying Christ in such a way that he looks at it and says, hey, you're my friend. Thank you. Have a blessed Sunday.